Story 1, this is Fireteam Delta. Dad's coming home.
Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Welcome back to Fatherhood Friday. The sun's shining, a little bit windy, but here in Wisconsin, it has been super rainy the last few days. So to see the sun shining makes me excited for this day. So let's get started with today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a rewind back to a moment in time for me. So if we're going to transport back to 2004, and in 2004, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, and more specifically, Courthouse Bay, which is, if you've ever been to Camp Lejeune, you know Courthouse Bay is in the far reaches of Camp Lejeune, and it's almost a $20 taxi ride just to get off base. I spent about, I think, 8 months there during my school, is where I was a generator mechanic, and that was where our school was. So I had a lot of intimate time there at Courthouse Bay and a lot of long taxi rides off base to Jacksonville, North Carolina there. But today I want to tell you a story about PTing at Camp Lejeune. So if you know Camp Lejeune, there are tank trails everywhere because a large portion of the Marine Corps' tank units are stationed at Camp Lejeune. So there's tank trails everywhere. And for a person that wants to do PT runs, tank trails are a ripe opportunity for you to go running for miles on end. You actually have no idea where it's going to end. And to be honest, it was a complete mindfuck. Every single time we went on those tank trails, it always messed with my head because for some reason, there was just this need to know where was that turnaround point, because the entire time I would be running, whether it be raining or sunny, didn't matter the weather. All I could think about, is this the turnaround point? Well, this is where we turned around last time. Is he pushing us farther? Is he making us go further? And that mind game really messed me up because it created this kind of default that I was just going to give up and I would always fall out, that the platoon would keep running and I would always fall behind, and that the journey to the turnaround point was not enough. And that falling out was something that pretty much cursed me through my entire Marine Corps career. I would say I was kind of getting a hold of it on the way out, maybe in 2007 on my way out, but it was still something that was like, I still hadn't overcome that limiting belief of staying with the pack, staying up. It was just always to default the falling out. And it really kind of got cemented for me and really burnt into my brain because I was there for 8 months. We were doing it every day. And it was just some default of this is how you react to a run that you don't want to be. And it was a place that I didn't want to be as well. Like I hated running. There was never a part in my bone that enjoyed running. It was almost like, oh, I dreaded doing it. But the lesson that I want to bring in that is, as a dad, how often do you feel that you're trying to keep up? How often do you feel you're trying to keep up with Instagram dads or Facebook dads or the version of life that the Joneses have next door? How often do you feel just like giving up, like I did when I was running? How often do you feel like it's just easier to sit back, put the kids on a tablet, watch Netflix, and go back to the easy path? To be honest, for me, it was always a lot easier because that was still there in a lot of my early days of being a dad, because it was just easier to take the easy road. Just like falling out in running was the easy road to not have to do that work to get better. It was just the easy road. So I got used to taking the easy road. And as we translate that into life, as we translate that into a growth mindset, the one thing that I've been kind of reflecting on, like, why was it that way in my head? Like, what was the switch that was in the backwards position or wired backwards that every time I wanted, because it wasn't like I didn't strive to be a good Marine. It was something that I desired, but that desire never translated into a better Marine that was capable at running. It was always a Marine that sucked at running, and I just kind of lived with that story and had no ambition to rechange that story. So how do we take that story and change it into something better so that we can actually get that burning desire inside to keep up with that pack? And if I reflect backwards on some of the work that I've done personally on myself, I think the switch that I had backwards is I was seeking external validation in my life. I was seeking people outside of my life to validate who I was. That in order for me to feel loved, I needed it from someone else. In order to feel excited, someone else had to give it to me. In order to feel connected or a part of the pack, someone else had to give that feeling to me. And when you seek that external value or that external energy to kind of get you through the day, the desire to keep up with the pack is never going to be there. Because when I was dropping out of formation, it would have taken an internal energy source to get me back up to that platoon. But in that moment, as I was dropping out, only thing around me was people yelling at me to get back up in formation. And I never responded well to that. That never got me into that. But that was also because that's not love, that's not connection, that's not appreciation. And it just didn't jive. So when that energy source came to me, it really just shut me down even more. I would just say, I don't care. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. What are you going to do to me? That idea of seeking external validation to validate who you are was part of my core programming for years, because in high school, I was always trying to fit in. And what I realized was by trying to fit in all the time, I was always trying to be someone else. And when you do that enough times, you lose the person that you are inside. And you no longer can derive a lot of energy from that source, because you don't even really know who it is to kind of think about it, to feel it, or anything. And now as I go towards fast forward to where I am now, and I've just been doing a lot of this work in the last few months where I've been doing the 75 hard and just working on making sure that the outside can match the inside when I look in the mirror. I think about that, the love and the energy that I have for myself on the inside helps power me through on the outside. I have to get up every morning and keep a strict routine. I have to get in the basement to do my workout in the morning. And if I don't do that, I'm at risk to not make my 75 hard challenge that day. That doesn't come externally. There's nobody else that I'm doing this for. I'm doing it for myself. And that switch is what I think I had backwards, that I was always seeking externally, whether it be friends, my wife, even your kids in some cases. Some people will live vicariously through their kids, or some kids will need their kids to meet some human need internally, that they can't love themselves without their kids loving them. That backwards flow of energy is honestly why I think I never could keep up, because there was never the source externally to keep inward. And it even, if I rewind back even to boot camp was something. So in boot camp, you go on a lot of hikes. Hiking was just as hard, even though it's running, you got all this equipment on your back, and it's something that's still challenging. And again, I would fall out. Now, in this particular case, the team environment in boot camp was a little bit stronger, and there was more cohesion to keep everybody together. But at the same time, I still had that default of like, I don't have enough in me. Ben Killoy is not strong enough to keep up with the pack, to keep up in that formation. And at the end of the day, honestly, I didn't love myself enough to keep up with the pack. Like, I was like, I don't deserve to be there because I'm just this dumb farm boy from Wisconsin that doesn't really even deserve to be in the Marine Corps. I was just on a podcast interview, and recently it hit me that I was kind of standing when I was going to MEPS, which is what you go through when you go into the military. And I almost had this feeling of like waiting to be found out, like that I don't think I belong here, and I'm hoping they'll figure it out, because I think I have imposter syndrome because I wasn't the poster board Marine. And that kind of plagued me through a lot of it. And I think if we correlate that back again to being a dad, I think there are a lot of correlations where you can probably feel like an imposter syndrome being a dad, especially if you have stories of maybe not having a strong father in your life, not having a dad at all maybe, or maybe having an abusive father. These are things that you qualify internally of like, what do I do to deserve being a dad when I don't even really have an example to follow? That internal energy can really mess up the flow of how you take charge of your life. How do you become accountable in your life? How do you take those steps forward to really transform on the inside so you can transform your world and family on the outside? But again, going back to when I dropped out of formation on those damn tank trails, and if I ever go to those tank trails, I'll probably spit on them just because I hated them so much, because they were just, I hated those tank trails. But at the same time, after spitting on them, I probably would go running on them, because at this point, it's more about conquering that fear and facing it head on. Even just last summer, I went head on my fear of running, because that emotion of dropping out was something I logically and emotionally avoided. So it's like, I'm going to face this head on. And I did my first marathon, or not marathon, but I did my first 5K last September of 2019. And it felt amazing to kind of fall in love with running for a different reason. And honestly, it was because I was starting to pull out the energy on the inside to get me through versus trying to find the energy on the outside. So to wrap this up, if you're a dad listening to this and this hit home, remember that in order to give love freely to your family, in order to love your wife unconditionally and love your kids unconditionally, you need to be able to love yourself on the inside. And when you love everything on the inside, the good, the bad, and the ugly, this is what allows you to step into your best life. This is what allows you to step into those big goals that you may be not taking action towards. This allows you to keep up with the pack, because you have a love and energy source that's infinite inside. And when you learn to tap into that, the world is your oyster. And that was ultimately, when I look back into 2004, that's what I had backwards. I was looking externally for the energy that I needed to get through life, but didn't realize that it was always on the inside and was always waiting for me the entire time. I'll wrap up this episode, and I will talk to you again on Monday.